Now let's take you to Parliament, where Parliament is still vetting ministerial appointees of the government. You know, government president nominated some people to serve in ministries. Now, what happening today is the vetting of Obi Amwa, who's been appointed as Minister of State, the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. Let's cross over to Parliament now.
Development Initiative, regional reorganization development has been merged with local government decentralization, rural development. Zongo development has been scrapped. Monitoring and evaluation has gone. Probably about 6 ministries. And then aviation, 7. And then the downsizing from about 126 or so to 85. So it's not that the president is not doing anything about it. And like the way we put it, we sweeping, sometimes the statements become a bit sweeping. And in any case, beyond that, the edit has gone out, cut down on everything for appointees, including MMDCs, who keep complaining anyway that they wish they were exempted because of the level that they are still pegged since 2017. So it's not that the president is not aware of the austerity or nothing has not been done. Some may wish to do it in a different way or different style. It's not that we used to have it so rosy that we could have, let's say, 6 ministers of state and the famous 3 wise men. But as the Constitution says, the president should appoint persons to help manage the state. And if at any point in time a president feels that this is the number he can use to manage or run the state, sometimes we have to give him the benefit of the doubt, especially when we see that efforts have been made to cut down, and who knows, he may even still cut down. And I don't think it should really be a major issue every time. Sometimes you get the impression that some people wish we even had only 5 ministries, and that all our problems in Ghana will be solved. But we have never been in the shoes of a president. And indeed, as I said, a lot has been done, and a lot may still be done. That's my response, Honorable Member.
All right, very well. All right, okay, yes, Honorable.
Thank you very much, my honorable colleague, Honorable Obi Amwa. You are the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, I suppose, and your ministry is overseeing the various district assemblies and the regional coordinating councils. Can you tell me what is so lacking in terms of the capacity of both the regional coordinating councils and the district and metropolitan assemblies to warrant the creation of almost parallel development authorities across the country? And I'm talking about the Savannah, the Western Corridor, the Zonal, and Central, and all these different corridors that have been created as parallel development authorities. Can you tell me what is so lacking in the capacity of regional coordinating councils, district, municipal, and metropolitan assemblies, and all the agencies under them to run development programs that will warrant the creation of these parallel development execution or implementing structures?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My good friend Ayariga. Well, you were talking about Western. There's no Western authority or corridor. We have the coastal belt, we have the middle belt, and the northern. And you're saying that you don't understand why such development authorities should be created when we have Ministry of Local Government. It depends on the priorities of the president, the focus of what these development authorities should do, and why the president would think that it should be separate from the ministry. We are not lacking, as you want to put it. It's not about lacking anything. It's about the president's focus and priorities. Indeed, if you remember, there was a whole special development initiative ministry because the president felt at that time that he could fast-track and accelerate development. So that's how I'll put it. They are playing their role. They're playing the role very well. If you go to the districts, a lot must be achieved. Because we are also in local government, we probably see more than maybe the average person will see. But the development authorities are doing very well. And it's not Nana Akufo-Addo's government that even created development authorities. We had SADA. We had SADA, we had other development authorities before we even came in, and it's been reconfigured. And now, if we have these three, I think they are playing their role until and when the president thinks that we can move on without them.
I've learned my lessons, not asking follow-up questions. For chairman says that I've exhausted my 3 opportunities. So, not that I'm satisfied, but I'll leave that hanging. The second question is a major governance question. And you've been a colleague here for decades, more than a decade, and we've discussed these issues over and over again. The public cry is that the size of government is big, and it is consuming so much of public expenditure. You look at the office of the president, and there are offices like Youth Ambassador for Diaspora Affairs. There are offices like Overseer of the National Cathedral. There are offices like Church Relations Manager, even though we have a ministry for chieftaincy and religious affairs. And there are offices like Diaspora Church Mobilization Officer. Diaspora Church Mobilization Officer. Then we have Focal Person, La Francophonie, even though we have a Ministry of Foreign Affairs with embassies in all the Francophone countries where we have missions. We have Director of Special Projects, Manager of Operations and Programs, Technical Communications Assistant, Technical Advisor, Zongo Development Authority. No, we have a Zongo Development Authority. We have all these offices, over 300, political appointees in the office of the president, the district assemblies, the ministries, then these parallel development authorities. Do you think there's any sympathy for the argument of the public that the size of government is big and should be reduced?
Well, thank you, Lord Chairman. The government is the biggest employer. So if government is employing, I don't think we should even lament about it. People are being employed. People have jobs to do. We should also distinguish between those who are public servers and those who are political appointees. We should also factor in the issue that some ministries were collapsed, but persons have been put there, skeleton, not a whole ministry, just to see off some of these things. If you go to the presidency and you have somebody in charge of special development initiatives, it's because that program is still running. And if projects have been completed, they have to see to the inspection and handing over. They are running the thing, and they are not as many as a whole ministry when it was a ministry. So some of these things we may have to probably interrogate it in a better way, because it's easy to just list and then say that because we have this list, government is too large. Government is really large because public servants are in government. And if you had a finance minister, since MBP came into office, we've been recruiting, giving financial clearance every time. Local government service, we've employed so many people to the assemblies, to other places, and all of us, our districts would have come across such situations. So if it's only about the size of employees, they are not all political appointees. Some are public servants who, all things being equal, work till they are 60 years, so retirement, even if we, the political appointees, will fade off. So let's have a certain kind of discourse that will bring out the issues. And sometimes it's not too good to compare. Otherwise, people will say that there's a phrase that we use. I've stopped using it, so I don't even remember. But the reality is that if you compare previous governments and appointments, you may find some semblance. But what is the point in sometimes saying that you employed 800? So if I've employed 600, don't complain. Let's interrogate it in an academic, factual way and see. Obviously, we can say that still some may be seen as a bit too much, but I'm saying that they all have a role to play and a purpose. And if you're not careful, we throw it to the public, and then the public, some who may not interrogate it, get incited that if this is the kind of people we've employed, then I will not even pay tax, which is a mandate, which is a legal thing to do. That's what I would say. Yeah, but you've listed some. I have my list here. I don't think that we should engage in this kind of situation where I also list what previous governments have done. I'm saying that let's interrogate it and then we'll make progress.
Well, I mean, if it aids your argument, you should list it anyway. But I guess this is my last chance. Chairman, you should be generous, you know. You should give me one more. Okay, Chairman. Let's now zero in on decentralization, where you have been for, I guess, past 5 years. Or is it 6 years as a deputy minister. In some places, some parts of the world, let's take even China, the model of economic development of China, you find out that the Chinese development model has been anchored on strong economic development at the local level. So certain parts of China, certain local government authorities in China have taken on the development of certain commodities. You know, so the local authorities are the centers of economic development. We haven't seen that where our local government authorities are also economic development units. So what do you think has accounted for this failure of our local government authorities to become economic development units, so that when you aggregate it nationally, we can have better economic development?
Well, thank you, Honorable Chairman. If you look at our Constitution and the Local Governance Act, it spells out that the districts should be centers of local economic development. It's in the Local Governance Act. And indeed, in the ministry, a policy on local economic development has been developed. My minister is very passionate about local economic development. And for every meeting that we have of the chief executives of the assemblies, this is one major issue which comes up. Indeed, as we speak, the Institute of Local Government Studies has a whole document on the local economic development of each district, sector by sector, those who are developing agri, tourism, business models, etc. So it's not that nothing is not being done at all. My minister sees that there's still a lot that can be done. That's how the focus is beginning to even get there. That you cannot say you're running a district when you are neglecting local economic development. We can't fast track it. We have to champion it, because that's the only way that you can say that you're creating jobs, creating competition, allowing the development of industries, and all those things. Some are bigger, some are small. We should be able to encourage those who are small to see that as the way out, and also let the big ones get bigger. But it's not that is not being done. A lot is being done, and as I said, I think I even had the document here. But yes, to throw light on the fact that our Constitution and our Local Governance Act specifies that, and it's part of our mandate. We have a policy on that. We are strengthening the policy, and then it's a focus that the minister is very passionate about.
Yes, Honorable, you are going to ask your incoming resource state the question. Okay. Honorable Obiamwa, congratulations.
Just watching Joy News Desk, and you've been watching the vetting of Obiamwa as Minister Designate for the Minister of State at the Rural Development and Local Government Ministry. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back to take you back to Parliament. Stay with us. So we're taking you back to the Parliament House, where Honourable Obiamwa is being vetted by the Vetting Committee of Parliament. Let's take you there now.
Chief executives to give notice, to ask the offenders to abate, to even ask for modification, and eventually serve notice, and then go ahead, if possible, to demolish. But even for public places, public spaces, you don't even need to go through all this. For public spaces, you just go ahead and demolish, because that structure is not required to be at that place in the first place. You may be charitable to give notice, but the ultimate is that this is not your land. You cannot cite a structure here. The structure should go down. And if people are well educated, if people are warned, that these are the consequences, some of these things should not happen. I also always say, across everywhere, especially in this capital, that if you're a chief executive and you really want to make your work easy, you don't look at a place, see people first putting concrete blocks and then ending up with container before you want to go and demolish anything. You should stop them when they start. It makes your work easier. But unfortunately, everywhere you pass, you see that structures have been put up before you see all kinds of notices, and then stop work, produce permit, and then even though if you have to demolish it, you can surcharge those who put up those structures. I think we may not need to go that far. But the most important thing, educate, enforce, and then ensure that the right thing is done. And for MMDCs, Honorable Demoche has warned them, if you don't deliver, these are the things that will let you leave for others to come and do the work. Because that's your mandate. Chief Executive, as you said, so much power, your functions are spelled out, and critical things that the district planning authority would have to be made to work. To the extent that Minister has even said that the situation where people take money for permits before they even carry out any exercise is unlawful and wrong. The person comes, you haven't even assessed what the person is coming to do. You ask the person to pay, and then you get compromised to the extent that you don't see how to return the money to him. So you allow him to put up that structure, which after assessment you will know that that shouldn't be the right thing. So I'm sure they are all listening to us. And this is a critical thing that the minister has been hammering, and that's what we want to continue to do.
So my final question, somebody sent me a message this morning, though I know the answer very well, but for the consumption of the public, if I may. The Honorable Minister, as a veteran in politics and a senior party person, so are you. Both of you were appointed during President Kufuor's time. Coincidentally, you have met in the same ministry. You used to be a deputy. When given the nod, you become a minister of state working with him. Can you assure this House that there will be a healthy working relationship between the two of you? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. As you said, I've grown in this party, and I've been a lucky person because I've worked with ministers. I've never had any problem with any minister. Rabo Safumafo, Professor Fobi, my good friend Papa Uso Ankuma. I mean, and then I was sent to the ministry, Haji Alima Mahama. We're very close, and now Minister Damboche. We've known ourselves for far too long. We know ourselves, we know our temperaments, we know everything about ourselves and how to gel. Some people are even scared that these two minds at that place may really do a lot. That's what it is. He's a strategist. And I would say that I'm fortunate to be working with him. And so far, he's so very good. Nothing will change. He's the boss, and I'm the second boss.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Sweeney first. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, I will start from a discussion we had the last time you appeared before this committee. It had to do with a company called Ghana First Company Limited, and how that company, together with your ministry and the Ministry for Water Resources and Sanitation, got accepted by the municipal assemblies because of a comfort letter that you gave them, and engaged contractors to construct a number of public places of convenience or public toilets. Because it's in the morning, I was trying to use a good euphemism, but yeah. So you promised the last time, even though you were a bit uncomfortable with that reference to the letter that you gave the company, but you promised that you were going to look into how these facilities that had started will be put to good use. I have come across a report that says that the Attorney General has actually directed the CID to discontinue any criminal charges against the company. The point, however, remains that these facilities started across the country are still unfinished at various levels of completion. The contractors unpaid, and the assemblies unable to decide or to complete, unable to complete these structures. What have you done about this matter since you appeared before this committee and got its approval to be a deputy minister again?
Well, thank you, Honorable Chairman. I remember this issue was raised. I explained the circumstances under which we asked the assemblies to listen to the company and to follow all the procedure regarding any PPP arrangement with such a company. That is what we did. Subsequent to that, I also said that the National Security and the Office of the President were investigating this matter, and that most of us were victims. Because in my constituency, some structures which had been started had to be completed, and we had to use funds from other sources to be able to complete the structures. For instance, where the place of convenience is demolished, and that's the only facility in the community, some of us could not just watch this facility because they were wondering why the assembly had gone into such a relationship and had gone that bad. So you're saying that the Attorney General said they could no longer prosecute, but that should not be the end of the matter. I've always said that if you enter into an arrangement with me or with the assembly, for the assembly to cede land with the understanding that you would provide funding for the structure to be completed, to be used for you to recoup your investment, and you abandon it halfway, the assembly has every right to come after you. And I don't think that is foreclosed. The only thing is you're telling me now that the Attorney General doesn't want to prosecute. I haven't seen it. You're saying it. I haven't seen it. But I'm saying that it was one big thing that probably the assemblies could have been a bit more cautious, because some of us even got alarmed that you could find assemblies signing about 20 or more contracts within one constituency, and such persons were to build toilets all over the place. We started questioning them that how would you want your constituency to look like, that every step you take.
But they took those decisions because of the letters the company came to them.
I have always rejected this, your claim, and I insist on it. And I can dare any chief executive to say that I was involved in such a situation. It's normal. In fact, it took us quite some time to even write that letter, that this company wants to deal with you. They want us to give them a letter. We cannot give them that letter. Let them come to you, assess what they want to bring. If you are comfortable with it, deal with them, but make sure on PPP arrangement. That is what my letter said. And I stand by it. I was mandated by Honorable Alima to write that letter. But to create the impression that I said they should go ahead and build these things, I reject it.
Hold on. You talked about Attorney General. Honorable Suhini talked about Attorney General stopping prosecution, and you also make a comment on that. What is the basis of prosecution in this matter, if it's a PPP arrangement? I thought that what is necessary is to enforce whatever agreement there was. Where does prosecution come in?
Probably you're saying that because National Security got involved, and if they thought that there was any criminal intent or the attempt to defraud any party, because a lot of contractors had made reports to the National Security, the police, and that is probably how the Attorney General came to be involved. But if they don't find anything criminal about it, it's a civil matter that we should pursue.
Well, the Assembly signed an agreement with them.
Yes.
The Assembly, from my understanding, provided land. So if the other party does not perform its functions, what can the Assembly do in your view? We are talking as lawyers. Can the Assembly take over? Because I read the gentleman announcing that if anybody touches that, he will sue, that they were his property. Do you have any idea what kind of PPP arrangement they had? If
yes,
I gave you the land and you procured contractors you haven't paid, yes, how does it become your property alone?
Yes, yes, Honorable Chairman. Indeed, the company carried out full-page adverts threatening to take anybody on because we were also threatening to exercise our rights. I thought it was empty threats. And as I said, even in my constituency, there are 2 facilities that I saw to its completion, and nobody has come to. Indeed, we had an arrangement with the contractor. You started this. You said that the company which mandated you to start this is no more taking any interest. Okay, we want to help you to complete it, for you to hand over. I have such facilities in my constituency. It doesn't mean that we cannot go after the person that the Assembly signed the contract with. I'm saying that...
In that case, my interest is, what have you done about it? You have a very beautiful arrangement for your constituency. Can you advise other districts that this is a legal way to go about it?
Yes, certainly. Except that sometimes you look at the circumstances for each case. I'm saying that in my situation, we managed to sit down with the contractors and then engage them to complete these facilities, but not even all. Because a major problem that we have is where MMDCs sign so many contracts. Oh, we'll give you money to build this, we'll give you money to do. And you were wondering how they were going to do all these things. Beautiful idea. We want to build a rest stop. People can stop. We'll make money out of it. We'll take your share because you bought the land. Halfway, the whole thing was abandoned. We have a right to go after them case by case. I'm saying that Assembly should still pursue it. Unless anybody is compromised. That is a different matter. Unless anybody is compromised. Otherwise, the surest way is to go after them and exact what can be taken from them as we move on. And that should be a lesson to anybody who wants to engage in such a situation.
All right. Thank you very much, Chairman. These follow-ups have been very refreshing. I just needed to put that on record. But, Honorable Nominee, I want to move on to the Constitution. Under Article 78(1), it says, Ministers of State shall be appointed by the President with the prior approval of Parliament from among members of Parliament or persons qualified to be elected as members of Parliament, except that the majority of Ministers of State shall be appointed from among members of Parliament. Then 79(1) says the President may, in consultation with the Minister of State and with the prior approval of Parliament, appoint one or more deputy ministers to assist the minister in the performance of his functions. Now, you are nominated as a Minister of State at the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. There is a substantive minister. I'm not even interested in whether or not that substantive minister has to be consulted before you are appointed, because you are not a deputy minister. So perhaps that consultation is not necessary. But the Constitution, 79(1), says that the deputy minister assists the minister. As a Minister of State, what do you do? Or what do you think you will be doing in relation to the minister?
Well, this question has been asked in various ways. Probably you came a bit late. This question has been answered. But as I said, the President appoints ministers for the efficient running of the state, as you have quoted under 78 2. Parliament, this is not the first time Parliament is encountering this situation. Sometimes an announcement is made and then a particular aspect of the ministry, for instance, under President Kufuor, Ms. Lisbeth Ohene, Minister of State in charge of Treasury. Under President Mahama, about 6 ministers of state at the presidency in charge of various projects. Under President Kufuor, Professor Yanka, Minister of State in charge of Treasury. Sometimes
I get you, and that's why perhaps your assertion that the question has been asked is correct. But I'm saying, in relation to the minister, what will you be doing? Assist?
That's why I've given you examples.
Because you are both ministers of state.
That's why I've given you examples that Minister Ohene was Minister of State in charge of Treasury. Professor Fobi was the minister. Professor Yanka, Minister of State in charge of Treasury. Honorable Matthew Boku-Prempeh, Minister. Honorable Akuto Osei, Minister of State Finance. We had Honorable Barredu, the late, as Minister. So, Justice Dubuahin, this Parliament approved. Professor Yanka, this Parliament has approved. As to what I'll be doing as a Minister of State, I'm still one step below a full minister. So my role will be spelled out as it's been spelled out. I'm already playing a big role in the ministry. I'm sure I'll continue to do that.
But Mr. Chairman, that's quite interesting. I don't understand how you are one step below a minister when you are both vetted and approved as ministers of state.
It's an upgrade from deputy minister to a minister of state. So you come back here to be vetted because you were vetted as deputy minister, not minister of state.
Well, it's a conversation we can continue to have, but really the Constitution doesn't say that one minister of state is above another minister of state.
The Constitution
a minister
says,
of state is a minister of state.
The Constitution says, as you read, 78(2), the President shall appoint such number of ministers of state as may be necessary for the efficient running of the state. And it includes deputies and ministers of state. If we've come to, and this
so
is
it
not,
doesn't define it as lower. Such ministers of state doesn't define any as lower and other as above.
So you're telling me that if you were to have the privilege of being made minister of state, you would have gone to the ministry to tell the minister that I'm equal with you. Now we are 2 ministers. We all go to cabinet. We will do. You know, that is not what it is, practically. So I wonder what you want me to say beyond the fact that I acknowledge that there's a full minister and I'm a step below, but a step up deputy minister.
Well, like you said, if I am fortunate, nothing stops me from doing that. At least the Constitution doesn't.
Okay.
And maybe because of that, don't you think we should be properly defining this Minister of State at the ministry properly? Because the Constitution doesn't stop anybody from walking to the ministry and saying, I'm also a Minister of State, and we are of equal stature based on the Constitution.
The appointor, the head of state, Commander-in-Chief of the Republic, has put you there and more or less spelled out your role. If you think that is not your role, you leave, or he fires you. So we should not create the impression that you've been given a title so you can just walk in and say that, yeah, I'm also your equal, so I can do everything. Somebody appointed you. And if you don't understand your role, you find out from him. If you insist that you are at par, and it's already told you are not at par, you either leave or he fires you.
Okay, so maybe in wrapping up on this, will you suggest that as a committee, given especially the calls on government to, reduce its size if it is unable to justify some of the appointments that they make. Will you agree with the committee? Will you agree that the committee should perhaps write to the appointer, like you said, the appointing authority, to give us an explanation of what your role specifically is going to be as Minister of State before we consider your approval or not?
I don't agree with you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah. Okay, Awama was here before you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Honorable Senior, congratulations. I want you to use this opportunity to walk us through the ministry's relationship with GRA on the new property tax regime. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If honorable members will recall, the 2022 budget, I have extracts here. The Minister of Finance said that regarding property rates, the decision has been taken. It's now government policy that GRA should assist the assemblies to be able to collect property rate and a certain sharing ratio agreed upon. And indeed, this House passed the budget. It's one of the revenue streams. But there's a background to it. Indeed, the Minister of Finance had been complaining for some time, and the kind of revenue they expect from property rate administration is a bit disappointing. And if you look at our Constitution, under 240, as one of the pillars of decentralization, it says that assemblies should have the financial base with reliable and sustainable revenue. And if you look at the sources of revenue for the assemblies, property rate collection is supposed to be one of the major sources of revenue. But indeed, Honorable Dambuchi authorized for a certain search or study to be carried out for the past 10 years. And I have some of the details here. Indeed, the assemblies have not been able to meet the required level, some as low as you may think of big assemblies. And they have their own challenges. The mode of collection, the billing system, the enforcement arrangement, and almost every sincere person complains that indeed this is not how it should go. Those who have had this experience of paying property rate, properly so-called, are the first to complain that elsewhere you see your road starred, you see other facilities provided, and when it comes to property rate, we collect peanuts. Sometimes even for years, no assessment has been made. So this whole arrangement with GRA is to bring in a certain reform and dynamism which should let us reap so much from the property rate. And indeed, if you speak to some of the chief executives, without wanting to come out boldly, they say that this is the best way to go. I thought probably we were the only ones they were speaking to. There's even a study on behalf of a foreign government as to how the chief executives see this arrangement. And they say that that is the best way to go. Some have even confided in us that indeed when it comes to enforcement, they are handicapped. We need a situation where people will be named and shamed, people will be prosecuted. And the law gives us the opportunity. Your property may even be sold for to recoup what you have not paid. The law has made room for that. And if we don't show our teeth, let people know that if you owe the assembly, this is the extent to which the assembly can go to recover, we will not get anywhere. But the system has to be modernized. I mean, if you own land in Accra here, you own land in Accra here, you can have on your phone a message from Lands Commission that your ground rent is due. Pay through this bank, and then they will show you receipt and give you notice that you've paid. How come when it comes to property, we wait? At the last vetting, I made an example of having to send my assistant to the assembly to go and inquire how much I owe and to pay. They couldn't even tell me whether what I've paid was for 2 years or 3 years. They cut across. And I don't blame them. If I sit here and they may think that I'm castigating or blaming them. But the reality is that we have not employed modern methods to be able to collect our property rates, and we have not enforced what is due us. We have not extracted our so-called pound of flesh, and it's hurting us. And if you do the math, if indeed we're able to carry out this, it will go a long way. Of course, one major handicap was valuation of property. As the law stands, is a land valuation division of Lands Commission that has the responsibility to value these properties. When the minister has written to the Minister of Lands, that has been done. Land valuation is poised to carry out. Indeed, they are saying that by the 1st of March, more than 261 assemblies will have their properties valued. As we speak, we only have 76. There's 185 that we still haven't valued. And for that reason, the bills are provisional. And even though the Rate Assessment Committee can be petitioned to look into some of these bills, we think that the way forward is to modernize this whole thing and let it work. See it for the next year or 2, 3, and it will come to stay that this is the best way to go. And the assemblies are happy, even for the kind of arrangement that if you're able to collect so much and you send me my 70%, I'm more home and dry, and the rest is between GRA and the Ministry of Finance.
Chairman, my last question is on Kwapem South, Dome Kitasi Road. You've been fighting for this road for some time now. I can see some smiles on your face. Where are we on that? And congratulations, thank you.
You may have to tell the committee that you are an interested party and there's conflict of interest. Those who have properties there, their properties are appreciating.
I have admitted the question, so kindly answer.
Those who have properties there have their properties appreciating by the day. Thankfully, the contractor is on the road doing very well. Fair Sky, Kuwaiti Fund, we had to do a lot, but thankfully the president came to cut the sword, and from there everything is moving. We are hoping that within the period that has been given to the contractor, funding will also be available at every turn so that the project will be completed on time. As you said, it starts from Dobi Komeya. Most of the communities are in my constituency, up to Kitase, and even the Ashas University would also benefit from this. So, I mean, when we appeared before the Finance Committee on this project, some of our colleagues were even jealous that how come we have been able to convince all the powers, Almighty Amwakwata, and the Finance Minister can offer after to pursue this, for you to get this kind of facility. We thank God that the contractor too is delivering. Sometimes we may get it and then there will be problems with execution. But so far, it's going very well. Thank you. And your property is appreciating. And apart from you yourself, I know you have clients too whose properties are appreciating.
That's out of order. Yes, Zara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning and congratulations on your elevation. I suspect you would have done some brilliant things that would have caught the eye of the president for you to end this elevation. My question, Honorable, is to do with our MMDAs. Now, you've been around the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development since 2017, and so clearly you'll be versed with the way of running the municipalities, the outcomes, some of the challenges that the municipalities are facing, and what the general outlook will be for the MMDEs, especially those in rural Ghana. My municipality, the East Gonja municipality, I classify it as a rural municipality, and so there are a lot of challenges, and up to a point where it begins to look like dysfunctional, you know. So I'm wondering if indeed you get the nod from this committee and you are able to assist your substantive minister in this elevated role. What will you do together to make the MMDAs, and I keep emphasizing those in rural Ghana, more responsive to the people in terms of providing basic service to them? And I'll share an experience with you. Recently, as recent as January, I go to a community in my constituency called Kuane on 30th January. And the community is in darkness. And I'm told that there was a vehicular accident that pulled down the transmitter since 29 December. And they had made appeals to the assembly, and there was no response. So I go to the municipal NEDCO office the day after and lodge a complaint, and the gentleman is talking too much English. So, because it wasn't solving the problem. So I make a call to NEDCO headquarters in Tamale, and I get response, because this is Monday, and the gentleman tells me, Hajia, Wednesday will bring a new transformer. This hasn't been brought to our attention. And so Thursday, there's a new transformer installed for the community. So, but for 1 month, they had to go without electricity because the assembly is just not responding to the people of Kuane. What will you do, and then what will you do with the minister to make sure that, I mean, apart from providing service to the people, also reducing the burden on the MPs? I mean, then it begins to look like we are in darkness and the MP is not doing anything. Thank you.
The MP carries all the burden. If it's good, of course, the others will want to share. If it's bad, it's the MP who is not delivering. That is a cross. But some of these things we should know. For your information, we even have what we call the dashboard, where the MMDCs are monitored continuously. You're supposed to bring a report regularly as to what you're doing in your districts. Quarterly reports, regular reports as to what is happening. And if we have any reason to believe that some MMDCs take some of these things for granted, it will go against them. They will be marked down. The unfortunate part, which Minister has been complaining about, is where, for negligence and a kind of lukewarm attitude, a whole assembly will lose funding. Because there are indicators. If you don't satisfy the indicators, if you don't pass all the indicators, the assembly may not get a grant, especially under the responsive factor grant, where the DACF brings in money and some donors also put in money. Some assemblies have lost money because those in charge of the assemblies did not do what they were supposed to do. And we take strong exception to these things. So, but we are all in this together. Some of these things, if you let us know, we also find a way of getting to them and finding out. And we do. Just by now, technology, just a message. Respond to this. Why is this happening? It goes on every time. But as you let us know some of these things, we also ensure that they give us the right responses, and also assess them in the light of some of these things. The president is the appointer, but if he gets the report and he believes that enough assessment has been done and people are not delivering, he's the manager. He has every right to substitute players on the field for the players to play the rest of the match for victory to be secured. So I'm not stating your situation, but indeed some would have to live up to expectation to avoid such situations, and for the people to know that indeed governance has come to the doorstep. Assemblies are not equal in strength. Some have the resources, some don't. They depend on central government. But there are things that chief executives can do without necessarily saying that they are well endowed for the community to also benefit, like what you carried out and the resource that you had. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
I'll give you the last one.
Chairman, I will. Even though I'm conflicted by friendship, I want to take the responsibility of making sure that my very good friend Obi Amwa respond to certain issues. Mr. Chairman, first I want to take him back to the answer he just gave, talking about accountability and transparency at the local governance level. How do you measure the current system we have as being transparent and accountable to the people for whom local governance is supposed to help in their development?
Your question is so broad, but I'll attempt to put in within a certain bracket. Yes, indeed, we have things in common, local governance and sports, and we seem to be crossing each other. I was in sports, you went to sports. You were in local government, I'm in local government. And we have our own issues. Well, accountability and transparency. Well, there are structures in place either in the Constitution or the Local Governance Act and other acts to ensure that the assemblies are run in a transparent and accountable manner at every point in time. That's why we have internal audit. That's why we have internal audit implementation committees. That's why the Auditor General, the Audit Service, go in to audit assemblies. The essence is that everything that you carry out should be within the law and should be under your mandate. So whether it's the Public Financial Management Act, whether it's the Internal Audit Agency Act, whether it's the Procurement Act, all the laws are in place for you to also ensure that you do the right thing. And as I said, with these structures, we then expect you to follow the rule or be exposed and get sanctioned for it. Sanctions can be several. Indeed, there's a report here where the Auditor General has recovered disallowed expenditure from 2017 to 2020. And of course, payroll savings. The Auditor General has this whole report. And it's part of being accountable and being transparent. To the extent that you've been made to even pay back some money, that may not even be the end of the matter. You can be sanctioned administratively, and if, as I say, if you don't live up to expectation, you face the consequences. So the laws in the Constitution demand accountability and transparency. And we must also admit that there's a lot that we still can do, in a sense that we have to comply as administrators. We have to comply with what the law says we should do, and equip those who are supposed to carry out these things, especially in building capacity, because that has been one of the issues and the challenges. Luckily, now, not luckily, as required, every assembly now has internal audit unit. Every assembly now has audit implementation committee. And we think that with these structures in place, the internal audit agency should be the first stop in ensuring that the right things are done, whilst the Auditor General has every right to audit and then sanction and bring reports to us for us to also do what we are required to do. I said your question is broad enough, but that's the area I want to pick and talk about.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I just want my brother to also take the responsibility to assist and to work together with Honorable Damboche to expand the transparency and accountability desk at the ministry and in all the MMDAs. It's very important for us as far as our development partners are concerned. My next issue has to do with the issue of fiscal decentralization. The most effective decentralized governance is the one that devolves responsibilities with fiscal responsibility. Our decentralization has been said to be still toddling because we've not really complied with that most important aspect of this, which is the fiscal decentralization. What do you think we can do to enhance fiscal decentralization so that the assemblies will be able to have the resources to support the devolved functions that have been thrusted upon them?
This subject has been discussed. In some parts, you will not hear, but the issue about revenue generation, the issue about local economic development, the issue about building a competitive environment for micro and then the medium scale industries to thrive, the issue about government flagship programs, one district, one factory, to get the assemblies or the communities and the districts moving in a certain economically viable tangent. All those are issues that we've discussed here. There are some that, as I said, for instance, the local economic development, how the ministry has a policy in place, how the minister is so critical about it, passionate about it, and how we're moving in a certain direction where we want to get every district to harness its potentials and not only to depend on the center, but create that environment where business will thrive. And then, of course, we just talked about property rate, how we can make so much from property rate if we put the right structures in place, if we modernize what we've been doing all these years, and then ensure that within the next year or two, we make so much for the assemblies to also carry out other projects, other ventures that they have to do.
Yesterday in our meeting with the nominee for chieftaincy, he enumerated how vital, important, and desirable it is to have our traditional authorities as being part of the local governance system. And that really took me to the old, even colonial days, where through the indirect rule, our traditional authorities were playing a functional role as far as local governance was concerned. Will you agree with me that to some extent our, let me say, leaving out the traditional authority in a functional capacity is affecting our local governance? And if you do, what do you think we have to do apart from the so-called issue of they having a representative in assembly to get them properly involved so that our questions about land tenure, land economy, local economic development, environmental degradation, galamsey and all those things could be effectively policed under that local governance system?
Well, that is another topic on its own. I remember when we were engaging stakeholders in the president's agenda to have MMDCs elected. The issue about the role of chiefs came up. And indeed, the roadmap was to go through the referendum, get referendum in place in 2019. By 2021, get chief executives elected. But within the 2-year period, a lot of constitutional issues to be looked at so that we will have such stakeholders like chiefs also playing their role in the assembly. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to reach that point. I think that for us as political party players, for us as members of parliament, we need a bipartisan approach to some of these issues. We went very far in getting to the first step about this whole referendum, but at the last minute, we didn't seem to have everybody on board. And that has really derailed a lot of reforms which were in the pipeline. If we were to look at the roadmap, all these issues were to be addressed. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten there. We still can do it. Let's form a bipartisan group in parliament here, agree on a lot of these issues, and say that we have built a consensus as to the way forward in the political decentralization and then participatory democracy at the local level. Some of us may have looked at the positive points that you have raised and say that why not we can look at it this way. So some of you too should look at the positive sides of what we've raised. Indeed, for the whole world, I always say it, for the whole world is irregular that we still appoint our MMDCs and we still have such structures as assemblies without all the reforms that we can make. The chiefs presented a paper on how they could move forward. I remember very well engaging Professor S.K.B. Asante to the point of letting him know that the paper the chiefs presented at the consultative assembly as to the role they can play in the assemblies was rejected. And they had carved out a very significant role to play as far as the assemblies were concerned. But at that stage it was rejected. And it didn't find its way in our constitution. And as it is, what we have is where they can send representatives to the assembly as government appointees for them to also play their part. But moving forward, I think some of these things, some are constitutional issues that we cannot just wish away. We'll have to agree, especially for us in Parliament, that this is the way to go. And then we do it.
After, then we come to leadership. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Honorable Obiamwa, I congratulate you. Our colleague Gisela calls you heckler in chief. Of course, you heckler in chief. So today you are in a saddle. I was enjoying the conversation regarding Article 78, the scope and effect of Article 78. that Honorable Suini brought up. My understanding of Article 78, and correct me if I'm wrong as senior counsel, that it's entirely possible for a president to name a list of ministers, transmit it to Parliament without even attaching portfolio. Article 78(1). Is it possible?
For efficient running of the state, sometimes you have to look at the norm and the precedent. Who is going where? And indeed, the Constitution even spells out the number of cabinet ministers. Even though every minister attends cabinet, it's not every minister who is a cabinet minister. So, for efficiency and expediency, probably you may not want to just bring the list without any portfolio. Then at what point do we even vet those who have been nominated, and where do we know they are going for us to get the right response from them? So if strictly you want to go by the Constitution, there's a lot that the President can do, but as I have said, I mean, if you look at the presidents everywhere, not only in Ghana, there's always a portfolio, except that once you've been vetted, let's say if you've vetted as Minister for Energy, if you have to become Foreign Affairs Minister, if you have to become Foreign Affairs Minister, you don't need to come here again. Yes. So even though we will ask you questions probably on energy, if tomorrow the President says, go to Foreign Affairs, you are gone. You don't come to us again for us to know whether we can examine you again as to whether you are competent to be Foreign Affairs Minister. As he said in P, sound. But I'm just using you as an example. Yes, so that's what probably I'll put.
Thank you. The reason I take this position is because it's very possible in the course of the administration for the President to do a reshuffle without coming back. So the appointment is to the person. So we are testing whether you are suitable to be a Minister of State, not necessarily to be a minister for so ministry. And that is my view. In fact, you said that it is a norm, but I know, for instance, in Nigeria, when the President transmitted his list of ministers, he just sent the names. After they were vetted by the Senate, then he now puts, you are going to this place, you to this ministry, you to that ministry. And but that's just for the discussion. I have one question for you, substantive question, regarding Gulf of Guinea social cohesion projects. My district my municipality has been selected as one of the key areas for focus. Now, my understanding it has to do with climate resilience, security, and so on and so forth. Can you educate me more on, and what are the timelines for rolling out, and what do the districts stand to benefit as far as this project is concerned? Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I have no further question.
Yes, thank you so much. To the earlier discussion, the President, after swearing in ministers, the following day can do reshuffle and change all the portfolios, and he's entitled to do that. And it's been happening. Some are vetted to be Greater Accra Regional Minister. The following day, they've been sent to Eastern Region as a Regional Minister. So, Honorable Korte, overnight can become a minister elsewhere, even though he's known as the King Kong of Greater Accra. Yes, Gulf of Guinea, North Region's social cohesion project. It's one of the major projects in the ministry. We have the Ghana Safety Net, Ghana Productive Safety Net project. We also have the Ghana Secondary Cities project. They are all key projects in the ministry. But for your question, the Gulf of Guinea project, which we call SOCO project, Social Cohesion, involves 48 districts. When you asked me the question, I tried to pull out the document here. We have 11 from Upper West region, 15 Upper East region, 8 Northern region, 6 Northeast, 4 Savannah, and 4 OT. As the name goes, there are 4 countries who are involved in this. The World Bank facility contracted by various countries. Ghana has gone for $150 million to be able to empower these districts, especially the youth and the vulnerable, and to look at other aspects where they can be more productive so that they are not exposed to all these jihadist movement and other things coming across. And for us, it's taking off. If you remember, the Vice President launched it. And as you said, your district is very much involved. The stage we've reached is to get the assemblies to submit the kind of projects that they want to undertake. And then how you also get involved so that within the mandated period, we should be able to invest in communities to show resilience and inclusion and to get the youth more occupied and also build structures to make it worthwhile. And of course, we don't discard the climate change aspect of it. And for that, it's quite some substantial money that the government of Ghana has contracted to be able to develop these districts. And as I said, it's not only about this project. For the safety net project, you're talking about 100 districts. And for the secondary cities, 35 municipal assemblies. All these are substantial sums contracted by the government of Ghana to be able to develop these communities. And I think we've discussed your place before, but you're always welcome for us to get you more involved, even though you are required to be involved, as to how far we've gone with your assembly and the whole project. I don't know whether I've satisfied you in answering, unless you want to know more, which the minister has always told you that you're invited.
Okay, I think I should come to leadership now. All right, I'll give you one for...
Senior, congratulations. Sometime between 2017 and 2021, we passed a new act empowering local governments to revert to their management and supervision of basic schools in the country. Now, we don't see the supervision or the management from the local assemblies, rather selling of school lands for shops in Kumasi, especially, and other places. All basic school lands, especially the school fields that they are playing with, is being sold left, right, and center. Popular, a same cluster of schools. Now, shops are same. Shops have been built by the assembly around all the school. It's turning into a market. You go and people are playing, taking over the school fields 24. They don't even allow the school children to enjoy school. What is the local government ministry and its assemblies going to do about this? Because if we don't put a stop to it, another central government will try to take what is giving legitimately to local government back to the center.
You've raised various issues, and I think the first thing we need to know under the Local Governance Act is the heads of department are part of the assembly system, and that if they attend meetings, heads of department meetings, with the chief executive, then obviously they should be able to draw the attention of the chief executive, of the heads of department, to such situations before it even gets beyond them. What you said is something that needs to be investigated and interrogated. But I don't think that decentralization would have caused this. Yes, I don't think decentralization would have caused it. If it's encroachment of public spaces by the assembly itself, then they should know that once people encroach on public spaces, they are mandated to act. And if they themselves are doing the encroachment, then of course, I'm sure some people are listening, and those involved, if they are not listening, people will let them know that this is an issue which has come up. And once it's come up, I'm sure Minister will mandate that the matter should be investigated and then the right thing carried out. He called me senior because I was his senior at Pempe College. I was his house prefect.
He was my house prefect. Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Honorable Obi Amwa.